Congress. Okay, who has the power to approve the federal budget?
Oh my goodness.
A, President. B, Supreme Court. C, Congress. D, Vice President.
Wait, regulate the what?
Approve the federal budget.
Federal budget. Okay, it's not Vice.
Welcome back to PS Weekly, the sound of the New York City school system. I'm Jasmine Centeno.
And I'm Annie He.
You're listening to me and Annie playing a civics game, the Great American Political Quiz.
Oh, hold on. Let me cook. Let's say Congress.
Oh, you're right.
Hey! I really freestyled that one. I can't lie.
We know, but just not. Which amendment provides the rights to bear arms? A, First Amendment. B, Second Amendment. C, Third Amendment. Or D, Fourth Amendment.
The right to bear arms?
Yep.
Oh no, I got this one. Chill. Shout out my history teacher. It's B.
B?
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Second
you.
Amendment, the right to bear arms.
I was about to say loud and wrong. What is a Super Tuesday? A?
Super Tuesday?
Yo, what is a Super Tuesday? The day of the general election, the day of the electoral vote count. C, a day when multiple states hold primaries or caucuses. D, the day of the presidential inauguration.
Super Tuesday? That sounds like a knockoff of Black Friday. I can't lie.
This is under federal electoral system.
I'm gonna take a wild guess and say it's B.
No, it's C.
Wait, what was C?
A day when multiple states hold primaries or caucuses. Super Tuesday.
Super Tuesday? That... What?
What's so super?
Okay, well, playing that game just reminded me of the time when I was playing a Kahoot about the US government, which was meant for 8th graders, mind you, in my macroeconomics class. And everyone was getting the questions wrong, including me. And it was in that moment I realized that, okay, maybe I don't know that much about civics, even though I've been swearing to myself I do. It's kind of crazy. Well, now this revelation prompted me to do some research into how well people my age understand civics. But not just my age, just the American population. And what I found was, well, the word surprise couldn't even describe what I had felt. And it was just so baffling because what do you mean that 1 in every 3 Americans cannot name a single branch of government? Is our educational system really failing us that badly?
I don't have an exact civics course, but classes like my AP Government and Politics class incorporate forms of civics within the curriculum. Within my class, my favorite teacher, she would just go beyond simple history, and instead she'd dedicate 10 to 15 minutes to the start of class to have a discussion on what we call current events. And this would lead into even bigger discussions, where my teacher, she would go into the logistics of how executive orders work, or trying to tie these discussions back to class.
And understanding what civics is and how it can be applied to real life is a significant topic people should be aware of, especially in this political climate. We decided to talk with our own fellow reporting interns at PS Weekly. They're working on a story about the upcoming mayoral election, and we figured they might have some thoughts. Could you two please state your name, your grade, and the school you currently attend?
Hello, my name is Jojo Fofana. I go to Fordham High School of the Arts. I'm in 12th grade.
And I'm Roberto Bailey, and I'm a junior at Hunter College High School.
Have you two ever taken a class in your school that's specifically for civics, or to learn about civics?
Not really.
No.
I mean, there's just like overlap, right? Like AP government, we had to do like a fake presidential campaign, but like when it came to like, you should vote. I don't know. Roberto, you ever get that?
No. And I also think that there's not a lot of required courses about civics, at least in my experience. I've taken history, but a lot of these electives, things like AP government, are electives. They're not something that the school tells us we have to take to graduate. So I think that even if it's an option, like for example, my school does offer AP government, it's not an option a lot of people take.
So how well do you think how well is your understandings of civics as, in general?
I guess I think that I understand it to the extent that I think I have enough knowledge of the way that our government on a local and on a federal level functions. And I think that's a lot of what civics is about. It's about engaging with the way that a nation is set up. And then Jojo and I have been working on an episode primarily about local politics and local elections. So I think that has also taught us a lot about civics, both in a broad sense, but also kind of getting down to the granular.
So you mentioned you were working on a piece about local government. What inspired you to choose such a topic in the first place?
Probably just pent up anger. I've always been, sorry, I know that's a crude response, but I've always been fairly angry about how apolitical the consensus has been these days. I think a lack of voting has caused a lot of problems. And I think this need to feel unproblematic and this need to feel, I don't want to be responsible for stuff, I don't want to give my opinion, has caused the rights of minorities, the rights of women, the rights of people from like my home country to have been absolutely demolished. And it's disgusting. I also have some thoughts about our recent mayor.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I see a lot of my peers, a lot of young people be engaged politically in the sense that they'll, repost an Instagram story.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of reposting going on, and there's not a lot of voting going on. Our age group, Gen Z, we vote the least. It's just the way that it is.
Right.
And on so many levels, like this kind of surface level engagement with politics without having people actually go to the polls, it's ridiculous. And so I wanted to delve into why that's happening, why we have people who might be engaged on the surface, but who aren't actually putting in the work to affect the change that they kind of claim to care about.
Could you describe what your piece is about?
Yeah, for sure. So what we wanted to cover with our piece is youth engagement in the mayoral election. So the Democratic primary is coming up. It's in late June in New York City, and we've seen historically that there's not a lot of youth engagement. So what we want to do is assess why and talk to some people who are trying to make a difference to change that.
We also talked to like a fair bit of our own students. So not my own students, but our like classmates or friends, and we wanted to gauge what that participation was. And when I like talked to my classmates, spoiler alerts, it was fairly low, and it was like low to the point of, wait, we had a mayor? Wait, who's Mayor Adams again? Wait, Cuomo. What is he like? Was he like a senator? They didn't even know who Cuomo was.
Oh my God.
I know.
That's crazy.
Okay, that blew up the
sorry.
microphone.
Did we break the sound barrier?
A little bit.
But yeah, it was like really concerning. Like, was it better on your end?
When I talked, I have some very politically active friends, so they did know that they did know Mayor Adams, but I think that a lot of people, even if they know kind of the basics, they might know a little bit about civics, they might know a little bit about the candidates, they still aren't voting. Like, the majority of people in my school, even if they're 18, haven't registered to vote. And you can register as early as, I believe, 16 in New York. So there's nothing stopping a lot of people from registering to vote, and yet they don't do it. So that's something we really wanted to look into.
So what did you two learn in the course of reporting that kind of filled these gaps left from your education?
I think empathy. Like, I think like because it's easy to say that 20% of like Gen Z isn't voting, right? But it's another thing to actually like talk to people, because like I talked to about 15 of like these classmates. I went to like everybody, even kids I didn't know, and I just like asked them, how many candidates could you name? And I kept asking them why, and I kept getting these very human responses, such as, I didn't have the time, I don't care. Why don't you care? Well, I don't care because they don't care about me, right? And it goes from, these teachers don't care about it, so why do I care? I never liked the politics, makes me very angry. I don't have enough time. I don't, very reasonable responses, because, I'm 17. Why does it matter?
Yeah, and I think it's not just the teachers who don't care, but the candidates. Something that we learned in our reporting is that a lot of these campaigns are geared towards older voters because they're expected to vote more. There's a reason why the kind of boomer generation has such a chokehold on our political system. And so I think that when people don't see themselves reflected in candidates, when the people running are usually not even like Gen Z or millennial, they're on the older side. And so people don't see themselves represented in these candidates, and they don't see these candidates advocating for issues that they care about. So I would say that over the course of reporting this story, what I learned was really like, I learned more about where these gaps are coming from. Like, why is it that on the education side, like, yes, there's like aspects where students aren't learning about civics, they're not being engaged in civics, but then from kind of all levels, they're being ignored. Young people our voices aren't being heard. And I think that is kind of the root cause of all of this.
That was Jojo Fofana and Roberto Bailey, and they'll be going more in depth in the mayor's race next week. When we come back from the break, we'll discuss a program called Civics for All. Stick around.
We hope you enjoy listening to PS Weekly as much as we enjoy making it. I'm Amy Zimmer with Chalkbeat New York. We spend a lot of time planning each episode, setting up and conducting interviews, cutting the tape, writing scripts. It's a long process and totally worth it. But here's the thing. We don't have a bunch of money or millions of followers. So we're counting on you, loyal listener, to help us get the word out. Take a few seconds and send this link wherever you're listening to 3 friends, so they too can enjoy PS Weekly. Thanks for your support.
Welcome back to PS Weekly. When we were last with you, we discussed with Jojo and Roberto their own experiences with civics at their high schools.
So we've mentioned the word civics like what, 1,000,000 times by now? But what exactly does civics mean? In short, civics means the study of rights and the duties of citizenship.
Civics courses ensures that students have a better understanding of how the government works and the civic responsibilities we all hold.
Exactly. Civics is one of those subjects that might not seem important at first, but once you really get into it, you kind of see just how much it affects our daily life. Being able to understand how laws are made and how to speak up on issues really matters. So my school, John Dewey High School, doesn't have a standalone civics class. However, we do have something called the Seal of Civic Readiness, which is actually part of a larger Civics for All initiative. Now you may be wondering, what's that? Well, let's hear directly from someone who knows it best.
My name is Jenna Ryall. I'm the Director of Civics at New York City Public Schools.
Jenna Ryall has been working as the director of the Civics for All at the New York City Department of Education since at least 2019. Co-designing the Civics for All initiative, a comprehensive K-12 civic education program available to all NYC DOE schools. Can you start by telling us a little bit about the Civics for All program and your role as its director?
Absolutely. So Civics for All has a cute name, which started during the de Blasio administration, but we're just the civics department. We're part of the Department of Social Studies and Civics. And at the time, I was on the social studies team here at the central office. And we kind of stopped for a second and we're like, what do you mean start teaching civics in New York City Public Schools? Like, we thought that that's what we were doing as part of our social studies work. And so it required us to take kind of a closer look at what we were doing in social studies education in New York City Public Schools. And we had, at that point, a curriculum that had been written by New York City teachers and New York City administrators that had been in schools for a few years. And we took a good look at that and realized that we were, if we do say so ourselves, like doing a pretty good job of teaching the foundations of American government, right? So like what I sometimes refer to as old civics, like just the basics, 3 branches of government, like these are the facts about government. What we were not doing at that time within our curriculum was helping students understand what that then meant for them. So like you get the foundations of American government, what does it mean for you? How does the system impact you and how do you impact it? And so from that finding of ours grew the Civics for All initiative. And so the idea was that we would put together a multi-component initiative that would help students take that understanding, that foundational understanding of government, and apply it to their lives.
Would you say that was like the core goals, to bring advocacy just for like civics across the board?
The core goal of Civics for All is to get young people the opportunity to practice democracy before they are expected to participate in it after school. And so our goal is helping students understand at the different phases of their schooling what their role is in their communities, and then make sure that when they are 18 and out in the world, that they can participate in our democracy in whatever makes the most sense for them.
How would you define Seal of Civic Readiness?
So the Seal of Civic Readiness, I was on the task force at the state level that put it together. So what this seal is, it's a recognition on a student's diploma that they have made the effort to engage as a member of their community and that they are leaving high school ready to be an active and engaged member of that community and a positive force for change in the community and the city.
How do you think the lack of civic knowledge affects young people's ability to engage in democracy?
You cannot participate in a system that you don't understand. And so what we really need to do is, starting with our youngest students, is think about what is that progression of learning that will make sure that when our students are adults, that they are well prepared and knowledgeable about the system that impacts so many aspects of their lives so that they can participate in it and use it in the ways that they need to be successful in adulthood.
How would you respond to some concerns that some people have about teaching civics, especially when there's this polarized environment within classrooms?
I think the most important thing for people to understand about civics is that there is not a teacher in the system teaching civics who is teaching students what to think. We are teaching them how to think. So the idea is that students need to be taught how to think critically, how to engage in civil conversation, how to take in the information around them and make sense of it. And that is what teachers are doing in civics education. So if we are hearing criticisms of civic education, and I do hear some, I think what you're implying there is that there's part of that polarization is a result of maybe polarization in the classroom or teaching a specific way of thinking, and that's not what civics education is.
I asked Jenna Ryall about some of the challenges she faces when it comes to integrating programs like Civics for All within schools.
The biggest thing is time, and then also prioritization. Civics is not a mandated content area. So it's mandated in the sense that our 12th graders have a half-year course on participation in government, and it is in the social studies standards, lightly, I would say, from New York State. But what we are teaching through Civics for All is not mandated. And so that can be difficult too, because there's so many conflicting priorities for teachers, because there's so many things that are important to young people, right? Civics isn't the only thing. And so figuring out how we can best support teachers to integrate this in a way that makes sense and be sure that there is enough time in their day so that if they're integrating it, they're doing it alongside something else that students need.
Yet, when successfully implemented, there can be advantages and these sort of success stories that come about as a result.
So one of our favorite programs is, it's called Project Soapbox, and we do it in collaboration with the organization MICVA Challenge. And so students, it's a public speaking curriculum. And so students write a 2 to 3 minute speech. They research an issue that matters most to them. So the question is, what is the biggest issue facing young people in your community, and what should we do about it? That has started so many students' civic journeys. From our youngest students, who we had a kindergartner once write a speech about how the kindergarten and the 4th grade were in the cafeteria at the same time, and that was really impacting him. And he wrote a speech about it and then had a conversation with the principal and was able to bring about that change. The power of that for a kindergartner to have been able to speak up and then advocate for something and see the change, that has completely changed that kid's trajectory, right? And then we have, the more high school versions of that, where we have students who have written these soapbox speeches and then been connected to some of their elected officials and have helped to bring about real lasting change in their community. We had a school in District 25 who had a student who was injured by a car on the street where their school is located. There is now I think it's a traffic light. There's a traffic light and a curb cut there because they advocated to the Department of Transportation that they needed those things. So those are small cases, but I think just in general what we're really seeing is young people understanding the power of their voice.
If you could leave our listeners with one message about why civics education matters, what would it be?
Civics education matters because civics is the water you swim in. you don't realize how much all of the other things that you are learning about can be touched by civics. It's really how you exist in the world and how you exist in community with other people. And so when you think of it that way, it's hard to think about what isn't civics and what's not important about it. Does that make sense?
Of course. That was Jenna Ryall, the director of the Civics for All at the New York City Department of Education.
All right, so Jenna mentioned that civics courses aren't mandated, and wow, I'm totally disagree with that. I really think that civics courses should be mandated because I'm 18, so which means I'm eligible to vote. And I can participate in the upcoming mayoral election. However, I know nothing about, the candidates. Hell, I don't even know their names.
Yeah, no, coming from a different perspective, low-key having a quote-unquote civics course, my AP US Government and Politics class, we've actually had, News 12 reporters come into our school and kind of, they were, interviewing us, interviewing those who were 18 and older and eligible to vote for the presidential election. And during that moment, we were going over the steps on how to vote and how to register yourself to vote. And my teacher, she even gave us an extra credit assignment if we registered.
What? That's so cool. God, I wish my school had that.
My interest towards journalism specifically came from that class. Before, I remember having no care for U.S. politics or the crazy government in general. I kind of took everything with a grain of salt and would rather zone out in family gatherings whenever politics were even being discussed at the table. She helped me realize that whether I liked it or not, politics was going to catch up to me, and I would eventually have to become engaged in politics or consider it if I wanted to see changes within my community. This, for me, was where audio journalism came into place. To this day, my teacher tells me that when I'm on NPR, I should shout her out. This may not be NPR, but thanks, Miss Perry. You've been listening to PS Weekly.
PS Weekly is a collaboration between The Bell and Chalkbeat, made possible by generous support from the Pinkerton Foundation, the Summerfield Foundation, and FJC.
The producers for this episode were me, Jasmine Centeno.
And me, Annie He, with reporting help from Chalkbeat reporter Michael Elson Rooney.
Our executive producer for this show is Avid Carrillo, and executive editors are Amy Zimmer and Taylor McGraw.
Additional production and reporting support was provided by Mira Gordon, Sabrina Duquesne, and our friends at Chalkbeat. Our engagement editor is Carolina Hidalgo.
This episode was made using Hindenburg Pro. Music is from the Blue Dot Sessions, and the jingle you heard at the beginning of this episode was created by Erica Wong.
Special thanks to our mentor Sydney Harper as well. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.